Fred, the bellboy, introduces audience to the Hotel Zanzibar, explaining that all kinds of people visit the hotel. He puts the baggage he was carrying into a room. Prince Rico, the heir to a kingdom, and his bodyguard, Mr. Blue, enter the hotel. They are using pseudo-names to keep their identities hidden. Once Rico enters his room, 911, Henry speaks directly to the audience, informing them that he plans to kill the prince tonight using a knife, after which his father will be ready to rule and he will wear the prince's crown. He enters room 912 after his monologue. Rico calls for Fred and tells him to get him a prostitute and gives him one-half of a €50 note, half of which will come later. Alice, an old woman, gets out of her room and knocks on room 915. Mr. Green opens the door and Alice asks him for help, saying that there is a strange man in her room. Mr. Green wants to know her room, but she is unable to remember. Her son Robert comes out of her room and explains that in 1953, she hit her head and has been having memory problems ever since. He takes Alice back to their room, which is 918. A couple, Amber and Gus, who looks exactly like Rico, arrive at the hotel. Their key card doesn't seem to be working. Gus goes back to reception to replace his key card while Amber waits for him. While waiting, Amber contemplates that being together for 10 years, their love has gone stale. She feels that a night in the hotel won't be enough to rekindle their love. The maid Colette arrives. She and Fred have been together for 15 weeks. She offers to let her in the room using the master key, but Alice instead asks to be let into one of the empty rooms. Colette lets her into the room, 913. Rico comes out of his room and asks Colette to change his room, because he doesn't like that the number of his room is 911. She offers him room 914, which he accepts, and tells her to let Fred know as well. Mr. Green opens his door and asks Colette for a bath plug. Mr. Green plans to end his life. He had twins, both of whom were given up because their mother died and he was in jail. One of the twins stayed in England while the other was sent abroad. Gus comes back with a new card, but that doesn't work either. Fred arrives and mistakes Gus for Rico. He takes Gus to room 911. Gus is planning to propose Amber and has ordered an apple tart with a ring hidden inside. Alice comes out and knocks on Rico's room, who mistakes her for a prostitute. Amber comes out being opposite to Rico's room and mistakes him for Gus. Seeing him with Alice, she slaps him. Henry comes out of his room and takes his knife out to kill Rico. He hesitates before going in. The prostitute, Tracy, arrives at the hotel. She talks to Henry and asks him about Rico. He offers her triple the money and gives her vial to pour into his wine, telling her that it's sedative meant to help him sleep better. Henry knocks at the door and Gus opens. Tracy enters the room and Henry goes into his. Robert comes out of the room looking for his mother. He knocks at Mr. Green's door, but she is not in there, so he takes the elevator. Colette and a hypnotist, Vince, arrive. Colette tells him that she loved how he made a particular person dance with the phrase, spaghetti bolognese. She gives him the card to room 916. She tells Vince that there's a lady in room 913 who feels out of love, but her boyfriend has ordered an apple tart with a ring in it. She wants Vince to use his hypnotist skills to make her fall in love with her boyfriend again. They knock at her door and enter her room. Rico and Alice comes out of their room. Rico gives her the money for her supposed services. Alice can't remember her room and enters the one with the open door. Gus comes out of his room, horrified at the service from Tracy. She tries to make him drink wine, but he refuses. Fred comes out and wants to know the problem. Tracy informs him that he is refusing to pay. Fred insists that he pay the lady, and also give him the other half of the €50 note. Gus enters his room and locks the door behind. Fred gives Trace the apple tart, replaces it with the leftovers, and tells her to wait in the room, 917. Vince and Colette comes out of Amber's room. Vince has completed the hypnotism, and Amber will fall in love with the first person who meets her. He picks up Rico's wine glass and enters his room. Colette knocks on Rico's door and tries to take him to Amber, but he pulls her in his room instead. Fred finds Alice in the empty room and takes her to her room. Robert arrives looking for her and knocks on Amber's door. Amber opens the door and falls in love with him. She starts making out with him in the hallway. Colette comes out of the room with Rico, who doesn't recognize Amber. Tracy comes out of her room and asks Rico to pay up, But Rico doesn't recognize her either. Alice comes out of her room with Fred. Amidst all the confusion, Fred and Colette go to meet up Vince while Rico knocks on Henry's door. Rico and Henry enter his room while Gus comes out of his room. Upon seeing Gus, Amber gets angry at him because she saw him with Alice. He apologizes to Amber for not being the perfect boyfriend but takes the apple tart and kneels down to propose her. He takes the cover off from the dish to reveal the leftovers. Meanwhile, Fred and Rico bring a passed-out Vince out. Tracy reveals that she ate the apple tart, and Gus reveals that there was a diamond ring concealed in it. Amber calls Tracy a tart. Tracy tries to slap her but accidentally hits Alice instead. She falls down and hits her head, which brings all her memories back. Colette reveals about the hypnotism to Gus. Gus kisses Amber, hoping that it would break the hypnotism. Rico comes out of his room asking for his bill. They all get confused. Mr. Green comes out of his room too and looks at both of them. Mr. Green reveals that his twins both had a birthmark on their backs. They both confirm the birthmark. Gus and Rico hug each other. Henry takes out his knife and holds Mr. Green captive. Vince wakes up and remembers seeing Henry at his hypnotism show. He uses a phrase, spaghetti bolognese, from his show and makes Henry dance. Fred and Gus lock Henry in his room. Tracy comes out of her room with the diamond ring, having flushed it out. The episode ends with Gus putting the ring on Amber and everybody celebrating. Please like and subscribe the channel for more videos like these.